Welcome back to our look at the horror classics of decades past. Now we come to Monsters and Madmen, starting with the giant Gila monster. Now, real Gila monsters only get to be about 2 feet long. The one in this film, thanks to clever edits, sound effects, and model work, a real Gila monster, by the way, looks big enough to take down a farmhouse. And the movie wastes no time in having the monster kill off a young couple who are going to meet up at the local root beer joint to listen to this music and dance. But their time is short-lived when we next see the people in the film. We meet this grease monkey who is studying engineering, holding down enough money to take care of his mom and sick sister. She's got, I believe, polio and needs leg braces, and is even on good terms with the local law enforcement, because when the sheriff, who's understaffed and underfunded and under everything, starts investigating the disappearances of both people and cattle and the streak of wrecked cars that have been cropping up, he enlists the grease monkey for help, even allowing the grease monkey to fix his roadster with tires poached from a couple of the wrecks and even a new headlight. Unfortunately, there is an antagonist in this film. The father of the daughter, or the father of the woman at the beginning. He's worried that she eloped with some guy who I guess he doesn't think is good enough. And when he finds out that the grease monkey was allowed to poach parts from the various wrecked cars that crop up, he wants the guy arrested for interfering with the law. And things come to a head after the mechanic that the grease monkey works for is killed, and the Gila monster wrecks a trestle, which causes a train crash. And finally, there are witness testimonies saying that there is a giant lizard in the American Southwest. We don't know for sure where this takes place, but basically it's somewhere in the desert where a large animal could possibly roam free without too much human interaction. Because there's a lot of desert in the American Southwest that is still very isolated. Not quite the Australian outback isolated, but still pretty isolated. And the explanation for the creature's size is supposedly minerals in the hills washing into the water table and screwing up the pituitary hormones of the local wildlife, and possible involvement with radiation thanks to nuclear testing. But anyway, things come to a head, like I said, when the antagonist's dad takes the sheriff to... oh, by the way, earlier in the film, a drunk driver claims he saw the monster, but as he was being tended to by the grease monkey, the guy wasn't believed. But he's vindicated when the monster literally crashes a party in a barn, and thankfully doesn't kill anyone, but he does put a big hole in the place. Bullets only seem to temporarily drive it off. And what's really needed is high caliber machine guns like the M2. That's basically small artillery. Like, it draws a line between a machine gun and a cannon. But anyway, eventually the grease monkey, who got some recognition over the radio thanks to the drunk, who as it turns out was a DJ, and even signed him on for a record contract because the guy has the voice of an angel. He saves the day and makes sure his mother and sister, who were menaced by the monster earlier, are okay, and then uses his roadster as a sort of a mobile bomb by loading it full of nitroglycerin. Yeah, earlier in the film, some nitro was stored in the garage where he works. Well, worked. Why they had nitro, I have no idea, but conveniently enough, running the booby-trapped car into the monster kills it in a colossal explosion, thanks to a bit of dummy work. They didn't actually kill a lizard, thankfully. And yeah, that saves the day. And after the antagonist dad comes to terms with the loss of his daughter, and after briefly being deputized and having to corral a bunch of young people, he has new respect for the sheriff, and the grease monkey laments the loss of his roadster, but hears that the railroad company might spring for a new one because he saved the day. It's a simple story, but it's the way the actual lizard was filmed and interacts with the people, which made for a surprisingly compelling story. Our next one is basically a cop drama, murder mystery, but unfortunately it might be a little offensive to some folks these days because I think Boris Karloff is supposed to be playing a Chinese police officer named Wong. Now, he doesn't do a funny accent, and his eyes and hair don't really look that Asian or that Chinese, but it might rub some folks the wrong way. Basically, the film opens with the murder of a police officer who was undercover as a sailor investigating the illegal exportation of looted Chinese artifacts. We meet a purveyor of phony Chinese artifacts that are for costume purposes, but he's no help trying to figure out who might be looting these treasures. We then find out that there is a shady nightclub owner who is working with either a European or possibly Middle Eastern woman who might be involved in the operation. We also, after meeting an American police officer who was working with Wong, we also meet an April O'Neil type of cub reporter. And the trio are basically investigating this whole time. Only the American police officer doesn't want the reporter doing any snooping. Yeah, she's basically April O'Neil before April O'Neil. We also meet the boyfriend of the exotic woman, I should say. I'll just call her that, the exotic woman. And we find out that his dad is actually working with the shady nightclub owner, somehow in part of the operation. He doesn't like the exotic woman dating his son, and makes his displeasure known to the shady nightclub owner. And on top of all that, we get a radio voice impersonator who can even do women's voices, who wants to do this radio program where he does all the voices. So he's basically Jonathan Winters. Anyway, in the middle of that, we find Mr. Forbes, a radio company owner who is being sold this new wireless radio. You can change the channel and even turn it on and off by remote control, and the remote works from a long ways off. File that little nugget away for later. And so, now that the players are all in place, that's when more bodies start piling up. The father guy, he's killed, and his distraught son is mercilessly grilled by the police. The exotic woman is killed, and the gun that did it is planted in the office of the shady nightclub owner. And even the voice impersonator is killed at one point. And some of the clues indicate that someone who heard voices and shots during one of the murders and found the bodies had to come in and turn the radio off. But as far as anyone was aware of, the radio was never on. Furthermore, at the time of the murders, a possible phone operator heard them over her line, because at the time phones were less sophisticated and less secure, and all you had to do was take the receiver off the hook. And after doing an experiment with a string and a book from a different floor of the building where it all happened, Mr. Wong deduces that someone used a remote control radio to make the operator believe she was hearing a murder over the telephone, when in reality it was the radio program. And as it turns out, the murderer was Mr. Forbes, because he was also in on the smuggling caper, but also he had designs on the exotic woman. And just before he's able to off Mr. Wong, the April O'Neil reporter lady comes in and bluffs her way into him dropping the gun. And so he's arrested, and the day is saved, although the stress kind of makes the reporter lady faint. But when her editor calls, Mr. Wong vouches for her, saying she's going to have a real scoop. It's a simple murder mystery with various characters you got to keep track of, but apart from the potentially offensive portrayal of an Asian by a white guy, they do have a Asian person playing someone who examines the stolen artifact. But he's just a bit character. Karloff's the main show. Apart from the fact that he's white playing an Asian guy, this was actually a pretty decent murder mystery. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if someone could maybe update the various aspects and get properly ethnic actors to play the roles, and have it be a modern episode of CSI or something. Our next one is Dead Men Walk. Basically a vampire flick. It starts with the funeral of this guy who nobody likes because he was into the dark arts. He's been traveling abroad, learning about the meaner things in creation, and while his twin brother, who is a professor, they were both professors, is trying to eulogize him, some old lady insists that he's not entirely dead. He's only mostly dead. And he's going to come back. Though she shooed away. And the professor sets to work after the guy's buried to rifle through and ends up destroying some very inappropriate research, much to the chagrin of the late professor's assistant, who is basically Renfield 2.0. In fact, I almost think he's the same actor, just playing it slightly downplayed, but I swear he's the same guy. But anyway, then it's revealed that, yeah, the dead professor is in fact a vampire. And it's proven by his brother putting several bullets into him, and the guy just laughing and disappearing through a window after proclaiming that he's going to turn his daughter, the other guy's niece, into a vampire servant and just wreak havoc. So the bodies start piling up as the guy gathers blood and strength and starts turning his daughter into a vampire, similar to what happened in the novel Dracula, until the old lady shows up and gives the daughter a crucifix, which temporarily wards off the vampire's advances. So he has his assistant try and steal the crucifix, but that doesn't go well. And he's able to escape and kill the old lady for finding the vampire's coffin before she has a chance to tell anyone. Meanwhile, some locals who are starting to get superstitious again because of what's been happening, they form a lynch mob to go after the professor because they saw his vampiric twin brother kill someone. Meanwhile, he has finally tracked down where his twin's coffin is, and there's a tussle between him and the assistant, resulting in the assistant getting pinned under a pedestal. And in another tussle with the vampire, a candle gets knocked over and sets the place on fire. And eventually, the locals see that there is indeed a vampire. And the human brother stays behind valiantly to hold his vampiric twin in the flames until both are consumed, thus destroying the vampire's curse over the area and saving the woman who can now marry her boyfriend. That's a happy ending there, but bittersweet. This one's pretty straightforward. There could have been more of a supernatural element, and the acting could have been a little less stiff, but this one was an okay update on the old Dracula legend. And I thought this Renfield was a bit more believable, even though he doesn't do the creepy laugh or creepy face. And next we come to a modern werewolf tale about a doctor who's been driven insane by the fact that he wants to use a combination of serums and wolf blood to turn soldiers into werewolves and unleash them on the enemy. He's ridiculed for his outlandish ideas, and so he cons a simple-minded gardener played by Glenn Strange. We actually get to meet Glenn Strange outside of the Frankenstein makeup that he will eventually don for the Abbott and Costello movie. And anyway, he cons this guy into being his assistant and guinea pig, and basically turns him into a pseudo-werewolf. And unfortunately, that's when things turn sour. Glenn Strange's portrayal is very sympathetic. I immediately felt sorry for the guy, because he's being pulled in multiple directions. He's got a good heart, but the serum is turning him into something he's really not. He senses it, but he just can't muscle his way out of the grip of the Mad Doctor, the real villain. And once again, bodies start piling up. First, the youngest daughter of a local swamp family. Not sure where this takes place, but it might be somewhere in Louisiana, seeing as there's a swamp. And the Mad Doctor also uses the pseudo-werewolf as a weapon against the people who ridiculed him, his former colleagues. But eventually, things close in on the two of them when the Mad Doctor's daughter calls her reporter boyfriend over because he was worried about her disappearance. Yeah. The doctor and his daughter and the assistant went into seclusion without telling anyone, so that was a red flag. Eventually, the townsfolk, having witnessed some of the werewolf activity, start a lynch mob to try and find the beast. And this, coupled with the gardener's own humanity breaking through, causes him to turn on his master. Unfortunately, during the big climax, lightning strikes the house where they're all hunkered down and ignites some chemicals, which sets the place on fire. And while the reporter guy and the daughter are able to get out and meet up with the local swamp folk, the Mad Doctor and his monster are consumed by the flames. A very sad end to a tragic tale of a good man forced into evil by a worse man. This one was simple but very compelling. Glenn Strange's werewolf is far more sympathetic than Lon Chaney Jr.'s werewolf, even though he's very sympathetic as well. The reason Glenn's werewolf is more so is because he's a complete and total pawn. He's a good man who deserved better, and his strength was tragically misused. I think that's one of the reasons why Glenn Strange was able to portray the Frankenstein creature so honestly, because he's another character who had the potential for good, but thanks to a mad doctor and later Dracula, came to a tragic end. And that's it for this block of horror classics. When next we meet Maniacs, the Mother of All Cities, and monsters both natural and unnatural. See you later.